It's currently November 1st, 2023. It is about 9 a.m. It is a very chilly day. It was Halloween last night, and I think it was like supposed to be the coldest Halloween in recent record, or on recent record. And yeah, it's been pretty chilly. We have snow for the first time this year. I wanted to make a quick video here today talking about the Apple Watch. I got myself the Apple Watch SE, second generation. I got the SE rather than the Series 9 because I think for most people this watch is fine. I think the SE has some extra, I think the Series 9 has some extra sensors. Namely, it can do ECG and pulse ox. But I don't know that most people need it, right? There's probably a small group of people with heart disease or lung disease for whom they may want to check that stuff like constantly all the time on their own, right? But like for the vast majority of people who are otherwise healthy and asymptomatic, I mean, they can get that stuff checked at a doctor's office, right? There's rarely anything that you can immediately change if you see an abnormality on pulse ox or ECG, right? So anyway, I didn't really see a need for that. I think the one major benefit of the Series 9 is that it has the ability to go down to 1 nit in brightness, which would be great at nighttime, when you're sleeping. You glance over at your watch, it's not so bright that it blinds you. So that is something I have noticed in the 2 days that I've had this watch, is that at nighttime, even if I set the brightness to the minimum, like when I'm looking at it at night, it's still too bright. So anyway, why did I get the Apple Watch after all these years? For a long time, I thought it was silly to get an Apple Watch. I think the main use case for an Apple Watch is to have like immediate notifications, right? Immediate access to notifications. But like, that's not something I want in my life. I want less disruptions. I want less notifications. I've actually turned off a bunch of notifications on my phone. I don't want to constantly the screen lighting up, turning on, telling me, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me." So actually, I turn a lot of those notifications down. Obviously, leaving the essentials on, given my profession as a physician. So why did I get an Apple Watch? Because it seems like that's counter to my intent. Well, it's actually for exactly this thing that I'm doing right now. So I've learned that you can do sort of monitoring on your watch, right? Like if you're shooting a video, you can use the Apple Watch as a monitor, which isn't obviously useful if you just use a selfie cam. And so far when I've recorded videos like this on my phone, I just use a selfie cam. But if once in a while you want to try using the rear cam, well, then you can't really line up your shot easily unless you have some kind of monitor, and so that's what I'm trying today. We'll see how much I end up using this rear camera. It is a little bit of a faff as well, because using the rear camera, you're generally not going to be holding it unless you go to the ultra wide, right? And so you're having to set up a tripod, and you're still having to adjust like this, it adds a little bit of extra work. But the thing is, it does allow for that ultra wide, right? Because the selfie cam isn't ultra wide, and so you kind of locked into this sort of arm's length out type of view. But if you flip it to the rear ultra wide, you can potentially hold it like this, still be confident that you get all of yourself in there, and then just occasionally monitor yourself on the watch. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Just take a few minutes talking about, it'll be story time. we'll do a little bit of story time. So, I remember ever since I was a kid, we used to have this large square ish type of clock. I think it was like a Seiko clock that would hang on the wall in the living room area. And I distinctly remember it, how exactly how it looks. It has the sort of faux wood sort of trim border, white clock face, and yeah, it was just always featured very prominently in the living space wherever we lived. And it was there when we were in a basement apartment in Vaughan. It was there when we were moved into downtown Toronto in the sort of graduate student sort of apartments. It even came out with us to the condo on Bay, and where it was eventually replaced with a round clock that was a bit smaller, and it was not as nice. It was just like a white plastic clock that I'm pretty sure was like just a free swag that was given to us by a pharmaceutical company. But yeah, so we've had this sort of analog clock feature very prominently in my childhood for many years. Yeah, so I distinctly remember one time I was just playing around with this lanyard. I was swinging it around. It had this heavy sort of clay heart thing that I made in school, and it like slipped out of my hand and flew up and hit the clock, and the clock fell off the wall and broke, and the frame came apart into pieces. The clock itself was fine, like it worked, but my parents had to tape it back together, tape the faux wood frame back together, and they did a great job actually, because you could hardly tell. But it was something that I got in trouble for. But yeah, that was back in Vaughan, and then like I said, that clock stayed with us all throughout our stay in the graduate residence, and then eventually into our condo on Bay. So yeah, for like a lot of my childhood, I've had this analog clock with the hands and stuff feature prominently in the living room space area. And then, when I moved out from medical school, we didn't have that. I think I might have gotten like one of those little alarm clocks, digital alarm clocks. And then for residency, I again never hung up a big analog clock. Fellowship didn't have one. And then, for the past 7 years that I've been living in the United States, we still don't have an analog clock on our wall. Yeah, so I must admit I'm kind of like missing it a little bit, because what happened is that during this period of time, my sort of adulthood, most people turn to their phones, right? Oh yeah, my phone's right there. I was looking for my phone. Man, most people will check the time on their phones, right? And I have an iPhone, and iPhone has always kind of had the sort of digital clock feature prominently on the home screen. So that's how people check the time, right? And so that's why I just never felt the need to have an analog clock, because I'm like everybody else. I use that, and actually I do have a history of wearing watches. Now, even since I was a small child, I've had like this tiny little cheapo plastic watch with nothing but just like the the sort of digital readout of the time on like a tiny LCD screen. And then after that, I had a slightly bigger gray watch that had like timers and other functions on it, but was primarily again just like an LCD screen with a digital readout of the time. And then I would say probably in my residency, or starting into my residency, I did end up having a nicer sort of Guess analog watch that I wore for a while. I think I even wore that. I don't know if I was wearing it during fellowship, but I wore it for a while, and then at some point, I just decided that it wasn't worth it to constantly have a watch, because I had to replace the battery on that watch a few times, and I always had to take it off when I'm doing surgeries and stuff, and so ultimately I just did what everybody else did, which was check the time on their phones, right? But phones, checking time on your phone's a little bit inconvenient, right? Because you have to fish in your pocket to pull it out, and I think a lot of people either have like cases on their phones, or in my case, I have a pop socket on my phone. We have these things that kind of prevent the phone from easily sliding out of the pocket, right? Because otherwise, it's going to constantly fall out of your pocket. And so yeah, there's a little bit of faffing about. I'm trying to fish this phone out of my pocket just to check the time. And then there are also plenty of times when I just don't have the phone on me, right? So it can be hard to check the time. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess I could have, at this point, invested in an analog clock and put it on the wall. But I don't know, I just haven't done it. And so, the opportunity came about to get an Apple Watch, not just for telling time, but, doing this sort of monitoring thing. And, it has the bonus sort of function of being able to have an analog kind of watch face. So I don't know. It's I guess it kind of brings me back a little bit. Right? I kind of appreciate the analog clock face. Being able to quickly, look at an analog clock to tell the time. So anyway, that's the kind of the little story time I wanted to tell. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think ultimately it would still be nice to have a nice big analog clock in the living room, kind of go back to kind of my childhood days. All right, that's it.